This is your First Alert Weather Breakdown, a deep dive into how weather works with meteorologist Evan Thomason.
Good morning. It is Thursday. I'm First Alert Meteorologist Evan Thomason. Thanks for joining us on the First Alert Weather Breakdown. Hey. Tried to say that like a cheer at a football game. But anyways, maybe I miss sports. Maybe that's it. Baseball's still around, MLB. But besides that, sports are in the off season until the late part of next month. That's one thing I'm actually looking forward to bringing back here just real quick is the sports forecast. Remember that late last year? We did that every Friday leading into some college football games such as NSU, LA Tech. I'm going to try to spread the love a little more around and get some. I know we got some LSU games last year. Maybe get some Arkansas games in there for Fayetteville, Northwest Arkansas. Maybe also Stephen F. Austin, which is in Nacogdoches, too. Maybe Centenary. I know we do high school game of the week, too. Well, we also did NFL. I'm thinking of ideas on the fly to, add to our sports forecast that we had on Fridays late last year again. That will be resuming in late August. Obviously, that's still a long ways away. But, hey, believe it or not, I do want to share one more thing today before we get into the full rundown of what's happening here on this First Alert with a Breakdown episode. I just realized we are coming up on the 1-year anniversary of First Alert with a Breakdown. Hey, happy birthday. It's almost a birthday. It's not the birthday today. We started the very first episode of First Alert with a Breakdown on Tuesday of next week. It's the 14th of July. That is when the 14th of July is when we started this podcast last year. That will be the first birthday for this. You should come to the birthday party. It's going to be great. It's going to be on the stream. Again, that'll be on Tuesday's episode, this coming Tuesday. I know today's Thursday. We still got a long way to get there. But Tuesday's episode of First Alert with a Breakdown. Just so you know, for the first time in ages, what feels like ages, we're going to try to have on me and meteorologist CJ Cartledge on at the same time, celebrating that together. We'll try to have some fun things planned. Some fun things planned for that episode, essentially. So don't want to miss it. Anyways, let's get into what we're doing with here for the day today. We have a couple things, exciting things happening that we also haven't done in a while on this First Alert with a Breakdown, which is an interview. I don't think I've had an interview on here in the past 2 weeks. I didn't have one on last week. Originally, Zach was supposed to come on last week, but unfortunately things did not work out. But he was able to come on today. So we are interviewing Zachary Fradella. He actually met with me about an hour ago and recorded the interview. So unfortunately, you can't ask him questions live, but you will enjoy my time that I had with him. We interviewed him about several national things going on, especially the Texas flood and some of the tropic season, as we kind of maintain the same wet pattern shape around the Arklatex and around New Orleans here. Pretty much over the next week or so. New Orleans and Shreveport have a pretty similar forecast over the next 7 days, which is spotty storms and heat. That's what we're going to be going into more in depth on our First Alert with a Breakdown for our local forecast here for the day today. But so we'll go over the forecast first, then we'll go show you the interview after that. So stick around for that after a commercial break. But for now, there's no commercial break. We're going to go straight into our outdoor camera. This is a live look out in the downtown Shreveport right now. Again, thanks for those of you watching, KSLA.com, and for those of you on our live stream on YouTube as well. Keep in mind, again, if you're on YouTube, feel free to ask me a question in the process as well. All right, beautiful outlook with beautiful blue skies and sunshine. A little bit of some small cumulus clouds around, which have always started to gather themselves right around this time. We've started off the past couple mornings with high cirrus clouds that don't really affect anything, but when we start finding ourselves with these cumulus clouds, now granted, you can see on this picture, those cumulus clouds are tiny, which means they're not able to produce any rain. But this is the kind of the seeds into the growth of the storms here later on this afternoon, because it's these kind of clouds, these puffy little lower lying clouds that grow in size and eventually lead into the thunderstorms that'll happen later on this afternoon. Yes, we have another round of that again here for the day today. But I will say we have noticed a few storms out there already out on our First Alert Doppler radar. Yes, already out this morning, which is something we really haven't found over the past couple of mornings at all. We'll take a look at that in just a second, but that's not found around Texarkana. If anything, Texarkana might be one of the few spots that don't even see storms here for the day today. Window world sky cam in Texarkana, again, more blue skies and sunshine, a lot less cloud cover even than compared to the Shreveport webcam that we had there. So for your what to wear forecast, I think over the past 2 days, the umbrella has been a necessity. For today, it's a just-in-case basis, essentially. What that means is we have a fewer amount of storms here for this afternoon that will certainly not impact everybody around the Arklatex, but we currently have the presence of storms in the Arklatex, and we're still going to have strayed, isolated coverage of storms here later on this afternoon. We'll show you the latest future track here in just a little bit. Overall, the driest day out of the entire work week is tomorrow. Now, notice how I did not say completely dry day. There is still technically a chance for storms tomorrow, but it's very tiny. We should be mostly dry throughout most of the Arklatex here for tomorrow, which will be great. Unfortunately, the weekend, we trend back in the other direction, bring back another system in, which will give us more afternoon storms. Lovely, isn't it? Before we get into anything currently happening, and before we get into the local scale of our future track and our future temperatures ahead, let's go over just overall what's going to be happening here across this entire local forecast over the next week. We're going to summarize the next week's worth of forecast here for you pretty much right now. Here is the setup here this afternoon. Got a high-pressure system out to our west, which is giving us beautiful blue skies and sunshine way out to our western states. Now, yes, I am using the entire United States to essentially describe our Arklatex weather here locally because our entire United States, or the atmosphere across the entire United States is, I wouldn't say pretty much the same, but the pattern that we're in is pretty much stuck in place, meaning this high-pressure system is stuck out west, continuing to drive in lots of dry conditions in essentially most of the West Coast states. And what this is pushing around, if you look at the circulation, this is a clockwise circulation here. What this is pushing around on the west-eastern side of this is cold fronts and low-pressure systems, one of which today is mainly setting up shop on the East Coast. Here for this afternoon. Now, that system goes on by, but here comes our next cold front and low pressure system that rolls on by across the central portion of the United States, mainly for the weekend. This is the picture on Sunday night where it's starting to roll into the East Coast a little bit more. But essentially, look at how far south this cold front really goes. It doesn't reach the Arklatex. That's my point. And the last cold front didn't do that either. Most of these cold fronts are essentially only hitting these northern states, such as the Dakotas, Minnesota, down in Illinois, hitting areas of the northeast with lots of scattered storms. We're talking scattered storms, not just a hit-and-miss kind of thunderstorm afternoon day like what we've had here in the Arklatex. On top of these scattered storms has been severe weather. We've seen tornadoes out of some of these systems. We've seen also hail, strong winds out of these systems. Essentially, all the severe weather has been packed into this cold front, which organizes usually all the moisture along its line. So what am I trying to get at here? Well, because there's no high-pressure system anywhere close to the Gulf of Mexico, this moisture is coming from the Gulf of Mexico and fueling all these storms that are happening along the cold front. But lastly, what I'm trying to get at is this moisture, in order to get up to these northern states from the Gulf of Mexico, guess where it has to go through? It has to go through the Arklatex, which has been the problem here over the past 2 weeks and is going to continue to be the problem here over the next week or so as we continue to have these cold fronts setting up to our north. As, yes, we don't have the severe weather and we don't have the scattered storms here, but we still have moisture that's being lots of moisture rolling through the Arklatex and lots of heat. And when you have the two of those things always combining themselves on top of the Arklatex, that equals storms still happening here. As I said earlier, because the bulk of the moisture is still, and the bulk of the severe storms are way off to our north, that means we have little severe weather threat here locally in the Arklatex with our afternoon pop-up showers. But, I mean, it's been something that we've been dealing with progressively on and off as we continue to have these rounds of cold fronts continue on by, and all of this moisture continues to come up northward. All of the hot air also continues up northward into the Arklatex. It's nothing but a repeated simulation here. So we're going to maintain the heat, and we're going to maintain these few afternoon storms each and every day. That's what I'm pretty much getting at here. The only change into the forecast is essentially how many storms we get per day. There'll be some days with fewer storms than others, but it will still have the presence of lots of moisture into the Arklatex. So we'll get into the rain side of things in just a little bit. But again, the heat stays. 84 right now in Shreveport, 87 in Texarkana, 80 into DeQueen. Feels like temperatures already in the lower 90s in some spots, 96 in Texarkana. Honestly, the hottest spot in the entire Arklatex here for the day today is expected to be areas around Texarkana, the northern half of the Arklatex, which is getting a lot less cloud cover in for the afternoon and a lot less of a storm chance. So you're getting highs around 95 today in Texarkana. I would not be surprised to see if Texarkana gets up to 100 again today. Just going to be honest. 94 today in New Boston, 93 in Nashville. Across East Texas, just slightly cooler than that. 91 in Carthage, 91 in Nacogdoches. Again, slightly cooler. It's still a hot day across the entire Arklatex, don't get me wrong. 92 in Shreveport, but maybe a little relief from the heat in other areas of northwest Louisiana where highs could actually only be in the mid to upper 80s here for the day today. That's because they have more of a substantial chance of rain, which we'll get to in just a moment. This is our last temperature graphic, kind of just pinpointing how our heat remains in place. Still highs in the lower 100s here all the way through Sunday and Monday of next week. So, heat stays. So does these spotty storms stay as well. Now, for now, again, we're already seeing spotty storms out this morning. You can kind of see that, again, all across the southern half of the Arklatex. Real quick, the northern half of the Arklatex, nothing really showing up at all in the slightest. And this is expected to be most of our radar picture here for the day today, to be quite frank with you. So, as of right now, you can see the loop of the storms going from west due east. So, most of the storm coverage is well south of I-20. So, this isn't affecting Shreveport and Bossier kind of area. But what we are seeing, if I pause this loop right now and go over these certain areas, looks like Converse is getting one of these heavier thunderstorms right now moving on top of you right around that area. Looks like Sabine Parish as well as DeSoto Parish getting in on some of this action too. This is continuing to move eastward again, so this is going to be moving out towards Natchitoches in the next probably hour or so. This is going to be moving toward Red River Parish as well. Looks like we got one of these cells stuck on top of Center. A few little more stray showers on the northern end of Nacogdoches County too. And so essentially, we're replenishing most of the rain coverage across the southern half of the Arklatex. And the northernmost cell looks to be moving about through Mansfield here in the next little bit, according to that. So here's our latest future track, which, again, always comes out kind of brand new and fresh here as of the First Alert with a Breakdown episode. So it kind of just pinpoints onto these storms moving across into Natchitoches, and maybe we form a spotty storm or two in areas like the I-20 corridor, but most of this is going to happen in northwest Louisiana during the heat of the afternoon. Now, if you look at this around 5, 6, 7 o'clock, most of this kind of fades out and away, and we're definitely dry out by tonight. But definitely not as many storms even as the last future track holds on to. We still have the chance of storms, a brief shot of rain technically for the northern half of the Arklatex, but only a spotty storm or two. I'm expecting overall most of the rain coverage in the southern half of the Arklatex today. And I will say, since we've already seen some of those storms in the southern half of the Arklatex now, they might not even get that rain chance actually as much here for this afternoon, believe it or not. So that's the rain chance here for the day today. Let's go into Friday. And if there's going to be any dry day of the work week, it's going to be tomorrow. Here's the little look at tomorrow afternoon, which we could flare up a few, maybe 2, 3 pop-up showers, especially in areas like Natchitoches and Nacogdoches. The rest of the region, though, maybe 1, 2, 3 cells at that. But overall, I think you get the picture. We're mostly dry, especially for the northern half of the Arklatex for tomorrow afternoon. Then we turn the rain switch really back on here for the weekend. Saturday afternoon, much more numerous storms showing up here. Look at the picture around 3, 4 o'clock. Again, this is impacting everybody. Areas still around Texarkana going to start to get back on the rain action, especially heading into the weekend. And some of these cells could mature here for Saturday afternoon. And Sunday, unfortunately, is looking more of the same. I know it doesn't show it yet there, mainly because it's early Sunday morning, but most of the storms are going to be coming back on through here for Sunday afternoon. So those rain chances staying low, but they don't go away. Again, it's just a few showers each and every day. We got a 20% chance of storms even for next Monday coming on up. As for your forecast here for the day today, again, as I said, greater chances for storms linger across the southern half of the Arklatex. Probably NACA is catching on their storms in the next hour or so, according to that latest future track there. And the kind of the progression of how the current radar is looking and where the trajectory of the current storms are headed at this point in time. Highs are in the mid-90s, just some spotty storms. Again, watch out here for the weekend, especially in the afternoon. If you got any morning plans for the weekend, looking good. If you're getting those plans into the afternoon, especially outdoors, they're going to be kind of flirting with disaster. Maybe not. Maybe that's the worst. That's not the correct phrase, because flirting with disaster would mean that there's going to be severe weather expected here with the storms for the weekend, which is not the point. But anyways, the case in point is just watch out for storms impacting and getting your plans wet, especially in the afternoon hours across both Saturday and Sunday. First alert, check to your tropics. Thankfully, nothing is happening, which is good news, because in the interview we're about to talk over, we're going over tropics and how that impacted the flooding situations that we saw across Texas especially. Again, as I kind of mentioned earlier this week, Texas's flood was caused by the remnants of a tropical system. So was the flash flooding that happened across North Carolina on Sunday night. That was also from the remnants of a tropical system. Barry and Chantal. The next storm is the D name, which I forget the name of. But I don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about it yet either, because there's no chance of formation, at least across the next 7 days. But obviously, we'll keep you first alert the moment something does pop up. So spotty storms here across the entire 7-day forecast here for the most part. There's some days which feature more storms than others, such as the weekend compared to Friday. And we could briefly dry up here for early next week, but overall, still a 20% rain chance sustained into Wednesday. All right, we got to get to my interview before we... because interview's got to take its time, and I spoke with Zach Fradella, who's essentially down in New Orleans, who's a meteorologist down there. We talk about a bunch of things, including flash flooding nationally and the tropics. Stay tuned for that. It's going to be a good talk between the two of us. And as I said, what's always great about these interviews is kind of getting outside information in, getting a second perspective, so to speak. So look forward to that interview. That'll be coming up after this commercial break immediately. I will see you after the interview real quick. All right? I hope you enjoy, and we'll be right back again after this.
Hello, welcome to First Start with a Breakdown with a man I haven't seen in quite some time. Gone some changes. We've also, I feel like we've reported on some of this as well as a station. You guys in your station down in New Orleans. First of all, this is Zach Fradella, obviously, with WVUE, Fox 8 in New Orleans. Yeah, I got a brand new station, a brand new setting. I guess real quick, just how's it feel? How's it feel to be back?
It's been crazy. The past year, there's been a lot of change in my personal life and also in the work life. Of course, if anybody follows me on social media, it's like I had a baby. And when I went on paternity leave for a period of time, we also moved stations. So we're right down the street from where we were, but a new state-of-the-art building. It's awesome. Everything has been great. It's been some learning curves here and there, including in this video. I'm doing a podcast for the first time and need to get our camera settings right and all of our light settings right, but it's been some exciting changes, even though everything in my life has been changed over the past 2 or 3 months.
It's work in progress. That's what life is, though, moving forward. That's pretty cool. I guess just getting to the weather side of things. Thankfully, recently, it's just been pop-up showers here and there across mainly the state of Louisiana, but I guess elsewhere nationally, it's been kind of the big talk recently is all the flash flooding instances. And obviously, the main one in and of itself is all the stuff that happened in Central Texas. Just to go back real quick to when I'm not sure if you were working early Friday morning. That is this previous Friday when it happened. I remember seeing all those flash flood emergencies coming in. It was a trickle one after the other and was something I think I've never seen, at least in the early morning hours around 3 to 4 in the morning. It was wild.
Yeah, and the interesting part is we always talk about how dangerous overnight flooding is. And I was working Friday morning. I wasn't paying attention so much. I kept seeing the flood warnings, but I didn't like take the radar and go over there and like, what's going on over there? I was focused on our local weather. But as the morning kept progressing, that's when we were figuring out, wow, something really bad happened. And it's just sad, the amount of loss of life and the children, what they went through, just an unreal flood. And the sad part is it's known as Flash Flood Alley. As meteorologists, we know that there are dangers that our local area can bring. You as a meteorologist in Shreveport, me as a meteorologist in New Orleans, we know what we need to watch out for. And they were giving the warnings in advance over there. The local meteorologists, I've seen multiple of their TV meteorologists in San Antonio saying, hey, this is a flood risk. This is a flash flood event, most likely that's going to play out. No, they can't tell you exactly where, but it's just a sad situation seeing what happened. But it was a flood that nobody could have predicted to that extent. The levels that Guadalupe River rose is just incredible, and it didn't give people time. It was just too fast to try to evacuate. It was just, you just need to try to find a way to get to higher ground and do it as safe as possible. And the unfortunate part is there's still a large loss of life, and they're still going to be trying to find people for several days.
Especially with all the people missing around still and all the reports surrounding that as well. Yeah, just astonishing all the videos coming in of seeing how high the river was flooding in such an extensive period of time, and also checking out that radar loop and just seeing exactly how long the storm stayed essentially stuck there.
It did.
Yeah, it was
amazing.
Itself,
it parked itself right at almost like the headwaters of the Guadalupe. There's like 2 forks of the Guadalupe River. And the heavy rain fell at just a perfect spot and to create just a major disaster, because everything and if you've ever been to Central Texas, most people have probably traveled into Texas. It's not like it's ground like here where, we have mud, we have soil with the Red River, with the Mississippi River. There it's just rock and it's that limestone. And when you pour water on rock, it's not going to go into the rock.
No.
And so you just dumped a huge plume of moisture and water onto a rock that's really high, because Central Texas, that's why they're Flash Flood Alley, because they're higher than places that the water is going to flow. And all that water has to come downstream, and it gets into those little canyons, those little valleys. And that's unfortunately where a lot of those camps were. A lot of the people lived were along the Guadalupe, and they've never seen that extreme of flooding before. And that's part of the issue from a communication perspective as meteorologists is we know each flood that happens could be greater than the one before. The more things you build out there, the heavier the rainfall that we're getting, you're going to have your river gauges are going to continue to push their limits to the higher extent. And so it's hard to communicate that risk that, hey, this flood didn't get to me, but the next flood could get to you.
Absolutely. And obviously this happened in other areas too. I think that's also something that surprised me. We received words of flash flooding across New Mexico, Chicago, North Carolina, even some areas as far north as I think Virginia in the Northeast, even some flash flood warnings. Thankfully, not as extensive across some of the major metropolitan cities like Philadelphia and New York, but especially with like the North Carolina, for example, flash flooding that happened with like 12 inches within a certain period of time. I don't think I realized this at the time that it was happening, especially with the Texas flooding. But the Texas flooding and the North Carolina flooding, both from tropical systems.
That's
You
that's the
think of a
thing.
you think of a weak tropical storm coming on shore. Okay, it made landfall at like 40 miles an hour. This will go on by and just go off into the wind. But no, the moisture around deep tropical moisture really stuck around, especially for Texas, stuck in place. And really, after making landfall in South Carolina, Chantal brought, I think, as much as a foot of rain in some spots around North Carolina. Thankfully, off to the east side of where Helene struck, but still
Yeah,
wild.
but it's a reminder that they don't even have to have a name. Even the weakest of tropical waves, look, if you get tropical moisture over the wrong spot, you're going to have problems. And those both had tropical origins. Now, one was an actual name storm. Now, Barry was gone long before it ever made the moisture train made it to Central Texas. But Barry's old moisture ended up in Central Texas mixed with the little area low pressure, and you saw what happened. So it just goes to show you, as we get deeper into hurricane season, just because they might be a 40 miles per hour tropical storm or not even a name storm, we might have something next week and it trying to form in the Gulf at the end of next week. You got to pay attention. You got to know what those threats are, because it may not be 150 miles per hour winds, but look, the rain, flooding is the most dangerous part of weather, period, period, period. Flooding is what kills people, not so much the wind.
Yeah. Recently, we had our 1 year anniversary of Beryl coming through, which made itself known with, I think, 67 tornado warnings in a day and 43 confirmed tornadoes through here. We did a special with that with KSLA News 12, which I was proud to be a part of here. But that was a tropical storm coming through, the Arklatex, essentially. So we watched all that coming on through. So tropics is obviously on our mind. And I believe the Gulf has a little chance of something maybe showing in like 2 weeks or so. But overall, to go on the forecast about the tropics real quick, I know they predicted recently for the numbers to be dipped down a little bit to what they originally expected, but it's still supposed to be an above average season. And most of that was tailored, I believe, to the global oceanic temperatures for the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, the biggest thing, and everybody always questions, like, why do they update the forecast once you get into the season? Because all of these things fluctuate. The water temperatures fluctuate. What's going on in the Pacific with El Nino, La Nina, all of those things start to change in time. Now, everything in the Pacific has stayed the same. That's one factor that's trying to be a positive for the Atlantic hurricane season. But we are noticeably much cooler with our water temperatures compared to last year. Now, it's not cold, and it's not to the point where the storm's not going to form because of cooler waters. We're running about 1 to 2 degrees cooler than this time last year. The overall amount of energy across the Atlantic is less than what it was a year ago. So typically that yields less activity in the grand scheme of things in the long run. It's still going to get really active in August and September. It's still going to probably be slightly above normal, but they did drop one name storm, one hurricane, and one major. So originally going in, I want to say it was like 9 hurricanes, 4 majors, and now it's down to 8 hurricanes they expect and 3 majors. So it's really not that big of a difference. And people always like, well, what the difference does the numbers make? Who cares about the numbers? And the grand scheme of things, it's all about where do they form and where do they go.
All it takes is one, and now Central Texas knows that, honestly. So
look at y'all with the tornado. I was just talking about that. It goes to impacts. It's like, who cares about the name? Who cares about the wind speed? If I'm going to tell you a storm is going to cross you, a tropical storm is going to cross you, it's not going to produce a lot of wind, but it's going to produce 60 something tornado warnings. You're gonna perk up a little bit. If I tell you, hey, it's gonna produce 20 miles per hour winds, but it's gonna produce 12 inches of rain in 3 hours, and that's the hard part, is communicating how these storms are gonna do that, but we don't know exactly where, and that's the difficult part about communicating to the public of the impacts of these tropical systems.
and sometimes they catch you off guard, especially like the Central Texas stuff. I just was thinking back on my experience of forecasting barrel on the morning of last year. I remember talking to people about, hey, there's a tornado risk seriously coming, but I think there were going to be 43 tornadoes that were going to form that day in our region. No, absolutely not. So
and it was a holiday. It was a holiday morning with the Central Texas flooding. It's a holiday morning. Everybody's getting ready for their weekend, and so it was a bad time to have one of the worst floods possible. It's just that everything got put together, and that's why the loss of life was so great.
Yep. And I will say, locally for our weather, it's been pop-up afternoon storms after pop-up afternoon storms with lots of heat, but it's pretty stagnant. But
a lot of people say, is it boring? And look, the reality is it's very difficult, especially you're a morning meteorologist. I'm a morning meteorologist. Having to go out there every morning, and we have the most weather hits out of all the meteorologists on staff, because we're on all the time in the morning to give you the weather. It's hard to really give you the weather when it's the same exact thing every single day. There's no big trend of heat. There's no big trend of stormier pattern. But I guess we'll take tranquil, because we know once we get out of summer, we get deeper into hurricane season, that becomes a big problem. And then it won't be long. The cold fronts will be coming, and that'll be exciting stuff for the fall. But when the cold fronts come, we get severe weather.
Well, just like sports, it's like the off season, which I will gladly take, especially. So anyways, thanks for coming on, Zach. I think that's all I got for you, unless you got anything else.
No, thanks for having me. It's always fun to come on. And look, we're on opposite ends of the state, but the weather impacts us all, right?
Absolutely. You bet it does. Thanks very much for joining, and I will talk to you next time.
See you.
Appreciate it, man. Till then, bye.
Thanks for watching this edition of Our Solar Weather Breakdown. Thanks to Zach as well for joining me there as well in the process. Hoping to get another interview in next week. Surprise of who it's going to be. It's obviously not going to be Zach again. But hopefully I'm trying to get one in here for next work week on the First Solar Weather Breakdown episode. We got one more episode of First Solar Weather Breakdown, though, here for tomorrow. Friday's edition of First Solar Weather Breakdown will be coming up again, same time, same place, 10:30. For tomorrow's episode, we'll be going over the usual here for your Friday, but it's always the great usual, okay? It's not just, the give me the usual. I don't know. Anyways, the point is, we'll have exciting regional weekend travel forecast for you. For those of you traveling outside of the Arklatex to Dallas, if you're going down to New Orleans to maybe go see Zach in his jurisdiction here for the weekend, unfortunately, yes, it's looking like pop-up afternoon storms are a part of their equation as well down there for the weekend too. But the point is, if you're traveling around Dallas, New Orleans, Little Rock, north, east to Jackson, Mississippi, or towards Monroe, we give you your regional travel weekend forecast here tomorrow, dipping into weather outside of the Arklatex here for this coming Saturday and Sunday. So stay tuned then, 10:30, Friday, First Solar Weather Breakdown. It'll be back then. Have a great rest of your Thursday. I'll see you tomorrow for tomorrow's episode. Be there, be square, and most importantly, be weather aware. Have a great rest of your Thursday. See ya.